Well, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So I'm very pleased to meet with you guys today, bright and early up in Toronto. We are going to be talking about immigration and banking tips for entrepreneurs and business owners who want to come to Canada. So I just wanted to let you guys know that today I will be recording my section of the presentation about immigration. However, for those people who are not attending today, this morning, unfortunately, they're not going to be able to get the benefit of watching RBC's presentation. But if you have more questions, these fine people are going to be there to help you, I'm sure. Okay. All right. So, so let's get started. First, I'd like to talk about this crazy time that we have and some of the travel bans that are currently in place because of COVID. So first of all, for international air travelers, starting on March the 18th, the travel ban was put into place so that if you are flying into Canada and you are outside of Canada and the United States, most people who are not Canadians or permanent residents will not be able to even board flights to come to Canada. Now, there are some exceptions to the rule. If you have a work permit or a work permit approval letter, you should be able to board flights. In this crazy time, sometimes even the flights, the air carriers, they may be sometimes saying no, but according to the law, if you have a work permit or work permit approval, you should be allowed to board the plane. However, and if you have immediate family members, you can show that your immediate family members are Canadians or permanent residents in Canada, you can board the plane. For students who have study permits, or if you have a study permit approval that was issued before March 18th, you should be able to board the plane. And for those who are about to be landed and you have your confirmation of permanent residence that were issued before March 18th, you can board the plane. If you have family members who are in Canada, but they're not Canadians or permanent residents, you can ask for an exception, but before you can board the plane, you need to ask immigration first to give you a letter, and then you can show the air carrier that you can board the plane. There are some essential workers who may ask for a letter, and even if you don't have a work permit, there are workers who can work in Canada without a work permit, but you'll have to ask for a letter first to show the air carriers. Now, this is just the first part of it, okay? This is just boarding the plane, and it's the air carriers who are going to be assessing whether or not you have the documentation to get on the plane. That's just because you can get on the plane does not mean that when you get to the airport in Canada, you can actually come into Canada. So once you get to the airport, you still have to convince the CBSA officer that your stay in Canada is of a non-optional or non-discretionary purpose. Can you get on the plane and still not get in at the airport? Well, yes, there are instances, for example, where students who have their study permits or study permit approvals before March 18th, they've gotten on the plane, they come to the airport, and they have not been allowed in because all of their classes are online. And the officers have said, well, all of your classes are online, you don't need to be in Canada at this point. So they haven't let them in. Similarly, some people who have work permits but can't show that they can't work remotely, that they can work remotely, and that they don't need to be in Canada. Sometimes the officers have said, no, you don't actually need to be in Canada. Okay. Now, there's a second travel ban, and that pertains to people flying in from the US or coming in, driving in from the US. So the exception to the rule of getting on that plane is if you're coming from the US, you can get on any plane and fly into Canada, okay? You can also drive to the border. But that does not mean that when you get to the border, you're going to be allowed in. So the travel ban from the US is you have to show that you're coming in for essential purposes. And many of those purposes may be similar to the first travel ban, but it's coming to work, coming to study in Canada has to be on for essential purposes, and you have to show that you can't do it remotely, for example. Okay. One of the key things is that what we used to do if we had an emergency situation and we needed someone to work right away, for example, we might send someone to the border to apply for your work permit at the border. But now, driving to the US, making a U-turn at the border around the flag, what we call flag polling, is no longer allowed. So with regard to immigration processing, many people are asking me, well, if I submit an application for permanent residence right now, what's going to happen? Still submit it. The processing offices are still open. Now, we've been told that because of COVID, a lot of the officers have been moved to work at home remotely. And oftentimes, because of the transition, it's been much slower in terms of processing. Also, some applications, for example, visitor visas, they may not even be processing them for a while. So unless it's an emergency situation. So, it depends on the type of application, but for the most part, permanent residence applications, especially those submitted online, they are still being processed. Work permits, oftentimes, for example, the officers are saying, are they critical in nature? Do you have to be in Canada right now? If you don't have to, they may be very, very slow in processing the work permits. Now, biometric centers are still closed within Canada, and around the world, different centers are sometimes open and others are closed. But we've just recently received an exemption for temporary residents who are inside Canada. They're applying for a work permit, study permit, or visitor extension or visitor visa, and they just for now, no longer need to submit biometrics. So the visa application centers around the world where you are going to be submitting your passports for visas or biometric centers, you'll have to see some of them are open and some of them are closed. All right, so with all of this situation, I wanted to talk about some trends for entrepreneurs and investors who, I'm always asking people, how much is it going to cost me to immigrate to Canada? Well, the question actually is not that. The questions are you going to be actively managing the business? Or do you just want to give some money and try to buy your permanent residence? Right now, the government is not encouraging passive investment at all. For almost all of the applications, other than the Quebec investor class, which is right now closed, and I don't do Quebec immigration, but I've heard that they are still reviewing the program. Other than that, all of the other programs in Canada require you to actively participate in the management of the business. The second thing is the ability to speak English and French, as you see in my presentation, is very important. There are only a very few programs that don't require some sort of language ability. So this is very important as well. We're going to be talking about ways to get to permanent residence, and oftentimes you'll see that it's not a one-shot deal. There are only a few programs where you apply directly for permanent residence. Oftentimes, there will be a stepping stone where you first obtain a work permit, you work in your business, you prove yourself, and then you get permanent residence. So let me start first with a very popular application for entrepreneurs called the Startup Visa. This is an application where you can apply directly for permanent residence, and it involves the following. First, you and up to 4 other people, up to 5 founders of an innovative startup company can apply. The requirement is that each of you own at least 10%, and together with a designated organization, you own majority shares of the business. Very important, each of you must have a management role. It's not enough for you to just get someone, you know, who has no experience and is not really going to be participating in managing the business to be one of the founders. Every founder must show that they can and will have a management role in the business. And the level for the English and French exams that you have to take, it's a CLB level of 5, which is lower than express entry. But it's still, you know, at a medium level for the language ability. Very, very important is, in order to qualify, your business will need to receive support by one of the designated organizations. So one of the organizations that are on the list that immigration has stated. And so there are 3 kinds of designated organization. There's the incubator. So the incubator has to accept you into their program. There's angel investor groups, and one of the angel investors in the group would be willing to invest $75,000 into your business, and VCs where they would be willing to invest $200,000 into your business. So this is a very good program, but it does require that you have a good business and an innovative business that will attract one of the organizations. You know, oftentimes these organizations now, they receive hundreds and hundreds of businesses applying to them every month, and they will go through the businesses and see and pick out the ones that they like. You know, what kind of business is it? Well, we're looking for innovative businesses. Innovation does not have to mean that it's an IT business. It does not have to mean that it's just a software business. Of course, many software businesses and IT businesses come into place, come and go through the program. But it could be, for example, you have a new process to process food. You have an innovative product that is new in the market. You know, I love, for example, to go on Kickstarter and look at all these new products that, oh, wow, this is really interesting. So those kind of innovations are also available. But you do have to show that you are going to be able to have a good chance for your business in Canada to be one of those businesses. So if you're interested in this, please do speak to me afterwards, and we can take a look and see if we can help you bring your business to Canada. Now, here's the process. So you have your business, you present your company to the designated organization, you get a support letter, and then you apply directly for permanent residence. So essentially, you apply for permanent residence. This normally takes around a year, but given COVID, it could be a little bit longer. In the meantime, if you want to come to Canada to work on your business and your family can come with you, you can apply for a work permit as well to work in your business. The second kind of permanent residence that I often work with entrepreneurs is the express entry. Now, express entry is very much a skilled worker based based permanent residence program. And what it is there's a few stages. So first, you would create an online profile if you qualify. Now, many of you will qualify under the Federal Skilled Worker Program if you don't have work experience in Canada. Okay, you don't have to step foot in Canada in order to qualify. Once you qualify, you create the online profile, you can get into the express entry pool, and you will get a series of points attributed to you based on your background, based on your, and we'll talk about that, okay? And depending on your points, every couple of weeks, the government has a draw. Now, during COVID times, most of the draws have been for people who have work experience in Canada, only drawing for Canadian experience class. There was a draw a few weeks ago for everyone, including federal skilled worker class. We do expect things to go back to normal once the pandemic ends. And the government traditionally has always invited, for most of the draws, everyone in the pool, okay? And also provincial nominee programs that are linked to express entry, also they have been drawn during COVID times. So if your number is high enough, and if the government invites people in your category to apply, then you will receive the invitation to apply. It is only with the invitation to apply can you actually apply for your permanent residence. When you get into the pool, it's not counted as an application. You haven't submitted an application yet until you're invited to apply and apply. So let's first talk about how to get into the pool, and then I'll talk about your points to get out of the pool, okay? For most of you, if you don't have work experience in Canada, you're going to come under the federal skilled worker class. So the entry point is that you must have a 6.0 in your IELTS for every skill level. So reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Okay, every single one you have to have at least 6.0. You need to have at least 1 year of requisite work experience, that's high skilled. And you must have 67 points for your background. And this is not the express entry points, this is a special federal skilled worker class, okay? For the most part, I don't really see a lot of issues other than the language requirement for most entrepreneurs to come into Canada and to qualify to get into the pool. So essentially, here's a simplified representation of the pool. So we have Juan, who has 415, Anna, who has 401, Jing has 436, and Tripti has 501. Now, the last draw was, I think it was 440 something, 448, let's say, okay? If that was draw, who's going to get invitation to apply? Well, you might say Tripti. But in these times, Tripti may not get drawn out because the last draw was only for people who qualified under the Canadian experience class. So Tripti, if she qualified under the federal skilled worker class, she wouldn't have received an invitation to apply. Now the previous draw, it was at 478 and they invited everyone who was in the pool. And in that case, Tripti would have received an invitation to apply. So what gives you the points for the express entry? This is key for most people, okay? So age. I like to say when it's your 30th birthday, you are no longer going to be having happy birthdays, okay? Because every time in your 30s, your points are going to go down by 5 or 6 points. In your 40s, your points are going to go down by 10, 11 points. Okay, so a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, I mean, there are very few people who can be successful in their 20s, right? To have that management experience, to have run businesses, you are going to be much older than 20s for the most part. So what are you going to do? Don't worry, I'll let you know, okay? This is just a lead up. Education, for most people, they're going to need to have 2 degrees, a bachelor's degree and another degree on top. Language, oftentimes for individuals who are workers, we're going to need to have language points of 7s in reading, writing, and speaking, and 8 in listening in order to have a chance. Work experience in Canada, you can't count self-employment work, but you have to work in Canada legally under work permit. Foreign work experience we can count, and we can get some points for there. Spouse's education, language, Canadian work experience, we can count a few points for spouse. Provincial Nominee Programs, they have to be express entry linked. And so they're not any program. For example, you can't use an entrepreneur program from Provincial Nominee Program to give you 600 points. Okay, it has to be special entrepreneur express entry linked Provincial Nominee Programs. Previous study in Canada, siblings who are Canadians, permanent residents in Canada, you get a few points. Ability to speak fluent French, that's very important. We often see French speakers get a huge bump because of the French ability to speak French. Trade certification for those in the construction and cooks and chefs. And you're going to say, well, Elizabeth, what are we talking about this program for? My points according to my age and all of what you're saying, how am I going to get through? Here's the kicker. Here's where entrepreneurs, business owners can get a significant bump up, okay? So essentially, we're talking about arranged employment. For those who are in executive management positions in jobs, in businesses in Canada, you have 200 additional points, okay? So essentially, you have to either have an LMIA or you have an employer-specific work permit, and you have at least 1 year of work experience in Canada in that position. So let's talk about how to get there. First of all, this is a program that I really love to use for people who are who have been running their businesses. You may have multinational companies, or you may have a very successful company back, a parent company, and you're interested in opening up a subsidiary or related company in Canada. If your Canadian company and the overseas company is related, so there's at least the 51% ownership, parent, sister companies, or a subsidiary, then you can transfer your employees who have worked with the overseas company for at least 1 year. So you can transfer senior managers and yourself, executive managers, and also you can transfer other workers who have specialized knowledge in the technologies or the methods that you guys have, okay? The total length of the work permit issued under this category for seniors, for the managers, are 7 years, and the specialized knowledge workers are 5 years. You don't issue a 7-year work permit at one time. The first work permit, especially for startups, are likely to be 1 year. Sometimes they issue it for 3 years, and then you extend it 3 years at a time. Now, people often ask me, how much does it take for me, how much do I have to invest in the Canadian business? This is the requirement. There is no requirement that you invest a certain amount. What we are looking for is a true business, and the work that you're going to be doing is truly going to be managing the business, okay? So you'll have to show a very good business plan. You'll have to show exactly what you're going to be doing in Canada, and maybe get started a little bit on the business. But this is a very good category if you are willing, you have run a successful business overseas, and you're willing to set up a business that is related to the business overseas. The second one is for people who want to open up a brand new business in Canada or take over a business in Canada and own it personally. So in this one, you have to own at least 51% of the company personally. It's not the company oversees it, you own it personally. And very important, so we are going to, under this program, apply to the Labor Department first in Canada. And the Labor Department will want to see that by you getting a work permit to work in this business, you will be creating jobs for Canadians. It's not just, you can't just say, oh, this is what I'm going to be doing and that's it. Okay, I promise I'm going to be doing that. We have to show that the company is going to be financially viable and it is going to be a genuine company, and that the company will be is actively engaged in business. So the level of establishment for an owner-operator LMIA is usually higher than the level of establishment for the intra-company transferee category. Now, many people often ask me, hey, what about the provincial nominee programs? I've heard that PEI, for example, is really good, or Saskatchewan is really good. My friend immigrated under this program and other programs. Provincial nominee programs essentially are programs that are created by the province. And what happens is immigration is federal jurisdiction. So the federal government is responsible for immigration. But the federal government has made an agreement with every province to allow each province to create their own programs. Now, each province also must report back to the federal government at the end about the results of their programs. And one of the very important things that they have to show is that their programs are not allowing and encouraging passive investment. Okay, so the entrepreneur programs from a lot of provincial nominee programs have changed dramatically from what it was a while back. A lot of the programs that just required you to have a business plan and not really create a business, in the end, when they did the audits, it was shown that a lot of people who did that, they actually never really opened up their businesses. So now what most of the provincial nominee programs require is that they will have a process where you can provide a business plan, and if it is approved, it is a performance plan, so that you can't just say, this is it, now give me permanent residence, okay? You will actually only get, first of all, the provincial nomination from the province after you have worked in the business for a while and you can satisfy the officer that you have fulfilled the performance plan. So if they approve the performance plan, you can apply for a work permit, okay? And a lot of times the provinces will want you not only to work in the on your business, they will want to see that you're actually physically in the province, for example, 75% of the time, okay? And then only after a year or two will they issue you the provincial nomination. Now, once you have the provincial nomination, that's the approval by the provincial government, you still have to apply to the federal government. And that time takes around a year and a half. So in total, you're looking at least 3 to 4 years for many of these programs to get through. Now, compared to some of the other programs that I talked about, this may no longer seem as attractive, right? Because there's a risk that maybe your business is not able to be successful. We all know the risks of starting your own business, especially in a new place, a new country, right? And also the processing times and the requirements of physical residence and etc. can be quite burdensome. However, for some people, especially if your English level or French level is not at a certain level, this can be an option. So I'm going to send out these slides to you guys. Here's our information as well. We have a COVID update page, and we often tweet about updates to immigration law on our social media. If you have any questions, please do email me and tell me you've watched the webinar, and we will be happy to discount our personal consultations for you guys. Okay, let's talk about some questions for the immigration part. One of the questions is, for startup visas, can one or more partners be in Canada? It doesn't matter where your partners are. They can be anywhere in the world, including Canada. However, like I said, for the people who are applying under this program, the total ownership of the program has to be over 51% to get. Normally the designated organization, they may or may not take a share, but let's just say for the founders, you have to have a majority share. So it's not something where you have a Canadian who owns a business and say, hey, I want you to invest in my business. It's for people who want to start their own business. If that person is in Canada on a work permit or a study permit or visitor, that's fine, but the founders, the people who are applying, have to have a majority share. Option of what's best for someone who's above 50, has a family of 4, that will depend on your own circumstance. Come and have a consultation. There is no one size fits all for anyone, really. It depends on your circumstances, depends on your goals and what you'd like to do. In terms of which province has the best immigration program, again, that's depending on you. Maybe a provincial nominee program works for you, maybe it doesn't. Which province? Well, depends on which province you want to do business oftentimes, because you have to prove yourself. So it's no longer, oh, I'm just going to submit a business plan and I can get through. And, maybe I won't go there afterwards once I get my PR. No longer is that the case. You really have to prove yourself. So choose a province where you want to do business. Toronto. Just kidding, guys. But it really does depend. Okay. Are there programs without English proficiency tests to immigrate to Canada? Very, very few. There are a few provincial nominee programs. For example, in Ontario, there's one for workers who are working in Canada, who have job offers in Canada. For entrepreneurs, BC has one that doesn't really require the English, although it does add points. Come and talk to us about that. But it's much, much easier if you can pass a certain level for English. Does immigration help? Does it help with immigration if you have a visitor visa beforehand? I would say it's nice to have a visitor visa, just because you can, well, now during COVID, you may have difficulty entering, but when you want to start a business in Canada, even though you want to get for immigration, it's always nice if you can actually see what your business is about, and you can actually make that real business decision about your case. It's not necessary to have a visitor visa, but it's always nice to do so. Some changes for the federal program at this present time. So for example, so right now, the draws during COVID, for the most part, from March until now, there has been only one draw where they have invited everyone in the pool. Everyone in the pool means, for the most part, people who qualify under the federal skilled worker class. That's the one where if you don't have any work experience in Canada, you can still get into the pool. Since COVID, the government has said, well, people can't really travel to Canada anyway, so let's just concentrate on inviting people who have a provincial nominee program linked program. Okay, so you have to, it's a express entry linked provincial nominee program nomination, or for those people who qualify under the Canadian experience class. To qualify under the Canadian experience class, you have to have high skilled Canadian experience, work experience in Canada. So, there was one draw earlier this month, July 8th, where they invited everyone. Whether or not this trend will continue, that remains to be seen. I think overall, for those people who are in Canada, who have that Canadian work experience and qualify in their Canadian experience class, it's good news for them because the points have been dropping dramatically for them. But for overseas, of course, you're waiting there, and even if you have really high points, you're saying, well, you know, what's going on? I'm not getting an invitation to apply. This is not going to last forever. During this time, yes, they may not be inviting as many people under the federal skilled worker class, but when it goes back to normal, or when, you know, there are, it could be the next straw they draw for the skilled worker class. You know, it's not going to last forever. The Canadian government, the officials that we've spoken to, this is really a COVID-linked situation. Have you seen cases in which a family of 4 with old parents above 40, above 40 is not old. It's old for express entry, but it's not old. Yes, we work with many people above the age of 40 to get them permanent residence. Okay, guys, well, that's all the time we have today. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you guys from RBC for joining us, providing us with so much valuable information. If you have more questions, I'll send you the slides and we'll send you the contact information for these fine people from RBC as well. Please do let us know and we'll be happy to talk with you about your own situation.